Hello and welcome back to Dukascopy TV. Now, the South Africa Reserve Bank met today to decide on policy rates, however agreed that despite various concerns, the current monetary stance remains appropriate, therefore keeping the repurchase rate unchanged at 5%. Joining me now to take a closer look at the South African economy and the local currency is Annabel Bishop, Chief Economist for Investec in South Africa. Annabel, thank you very much for joining me. Now, what about monetary policy by the South African Reserve Bank going forward against the backdrop of rising inflation and the rand at risk of further depreciation? Surely this will make it very difficult for the Reserve Bank to cut rates. Is the safest option at the moment to stay put?
We don't believe that interest rates will be cut this year, and indeed we don't expect them to be cut next year either. We have got a rapidly rising pace of inflation at the moment, driven by upward food price pressures and higher petrol prices. Additionally, in 2013, we'll see the impact of the reweighting and rebasing exercise come through. This is something that is carried out every 5 years in South Africa and is clearly best practice that is done by other countries globally as well. The point really is that this time around we will see the weighting of electricity prices double, and this is a fast-paced measure of inflation in South Africa. We're seeing double-digit tariff increases, and this should, along with some other increases in fast-paced inflation items, this should see CPI inflation continue its upward trajectory to the midpoint of next year. In other words, remaining out of target. So that I think the Reserve Bank will be unable to cut interest rates next year either.
Moving on to discuss the South African rand's volatility, the rand remains broadly under pressure against major currencies. What do you put down to being the cause of rand weakness, and do you think we're going to see a higher dollar to rand levels going forward?
There are a number of factors which are driving rand weakness. One of the key factors clearly has been the fact that we have seen downgrades to South Africa's credit rating in South Africa, both the sovereign and key corporate credit ratings. We've also seen significant negative impact from concern globally over the Eurozone crisis, which is still persisting, and worries over the US fiscal cliff. But in particular in South Africa, the significant work stoppages that we have seen due to the wildcat strikes in the mining industry have also impacted the country's currency negatively as well. We, in particular, have seen foreign investors sell off about 13 billion rands worth of equities since deaths at Marikana, and the concern really is that the rand, as it persists in weakening, will clearly drive inflation up, which in turn could cause the South African CPI inflation rate to come above its inflation target range of 3 to 6% by the end of this year.
What about sentiment among manufacturers, retailers, wholesalers and building contractors? There's concerns of a general deterioration in labour relations and worsening political climate. What are your views on this?
South Africa is already ranked very poorly globally in terms of labour relations, employee labour relations. The point really is that we saw this poor rating given last year in the Global Competitiveness Index. We were rated 144 out of 144 countries. So, we can't really be rated worse than that, but I think the point is that there has certainly been a significant deterioration in the employer labour relations. And the concern really is that this results in job losses, and that comes at a time when South Africa is critically trying to increase jobs and increase employment. So the worry really is that this clearly is negative for the South African economy. It will slow economic growth. We're likely to see economic growth come out lower in the third quarter and indeed for the year than previously expected. I think it speaks to some of the tensions we have in the South African economy at the moment, where we have significant currency depreciation, and that has obviously driven up inflation in South Africa and in turn driven up living costs, which is driving quite a lot of the tensions at the moment in the labour market.
Looking at the impact of disruptions in the mining sector this year, besides the immediate costs, what about the longer term and indirect costs? I know you did just mention the country's economic growth going forward.
Well, some of the concerns clearly have been that this has been very negative for foreign investor sentiment in South Africa. While we have seen some of the sell-off in foreigners' ownership of South African equities turn around, indeed there's been some significant purchases most recently, the concern really is more over longer-term investment in South Africa. That is foreign direct investment, bricks and mortar investment. And I think the concern really is that as these tensions rise, so too the risk, the ability of companies to be able to price risk depreciates. So the real concern is that if South Africa crucially wants to increase employment, then clearly we would need to try and look at ways to improve investor sentiment towards South Africa. So these are some of the negative long-term impacts. Particularly, South Africa's mining sector needs to return to profitability, and the ability for individuals to peacefully strike needs to be entrenched in South Africa as well. That is, individuals who want to work are able to work, and those who want to strike are able to strike without disrupting each other. So I think the point really is that there needs to be instituted a peace accord which can allow the country to get back to business. So these are some of the worries that have come out as a consequence of the serious strikes in the mining industry. And South Africa needs to turn some of these issues around now so that we can actually get on a more positive path going forward.
Annabel Bishop from Investec in South Africa there. Now don't forget to take a look at the latest edition of the Press Review, Commodities Corner and other exclusive interviews which can already be found online on Dukascopy TV. But for the moment, viewers, goodbye.